All right, let's talk about something that feels like it's pulled straight from a sci-fi movie, the path to the world's very first trillion-dollar net worth. And at the center of this whole quest is one person and the incredibly ambitious companies he runs.
So let's just put it out there. Could one single person really be worth $1 trillion? I mean, that number is so huge, it's hard to even wrap your head around, right? But here's the crazy part. The math actually checks out. It is possible. The answer is yes. But, and this is a big but, it all hinges on one massive if.
Just look at that number, $1 trillion. That's a 1 with 12 zeros after it. We're talking more than the entire economy of most countries on Earth. So, to even begin to understand how anyone could possibly get here, you have to stop looking at the individual and start looking at the engines, the companies that are built to create that kind of insane value.
And yeah, that main engine, for the most part, it's Tesla. The whole idea of a trillionaire fortune really comes down to some pretty simple math, believe it or not. It's all about one company's mission to climb what you could call a $5 trillion mountain. So let's get into it and break down that climb.
Okay, first things first, we need to be clear. This isn't about a giant swimming pool full of cash. This kind of wealth is almost entirely on paper, tied up in stock. In this case, it's mostly Tesla stock. So his personal fortune is basically a roller coaster that goes up and down with Tesla's stock price every single day.
And that brings us to the most important number in this whole explainer. Around 20%. That's roughly how much of Tesla he owns. And that single number, that percentage, is the key that unlocks everything. It's the lever that turns the company's value into a personal fortune. And the formula here is actually super simple. If you want your piece of the pie to be worth $1 trillion, you just take that trillion and divide it by the size of your slice. So, $1 trillion divided by that 20% stake, well, that gives us the magic number we're looking for. And there it is, $5 trillion. That is the insane valuation Tesla would have to hit for his shares alone to be worth $1 trillion. That's the very top of the mountain. And just to put that in perspective, almost no company in history has ever stayed above the 3 trillion mark for long. So how on earth could Tesla get to 5?
Well, the short answer is, it can't. Not as just a car company. No way. To even dream of that kind of valuation, Tesla has to pull off 4 completely separate, ridiculously ambitious goals that would totally change the DNA of the company itself.
So these are the 4 paths to the peak. First, they've got to crack full self-driving. Second, they need to build and sell that Optimus robot. Third, they have to completely dominate car manufacturing. And fourth, they have to scale up Tesla Energy into a massive global utility. Let's dig into each of these, starting with the one that could be the biggest game changer of all.
Path number 1, full self-driving. This is the big one. This is what could flip the entire script. See, right now, Tesla is basically a car company. They sell you a piece of hardware one time, and the profit margins aren't huge. But if they solve FSD, they transform into a software company. Think about it, a fleet of robotaxis generating money every single day. That's recurring revenue, and Wall Street loves recurring revenue. They value Tesla like a tech giant, not a car maker. All right, path 2 is Optimus. This is the next giant bet. The whole idea is to take all that artificial intelligence they're developing for the cars and stick it inside a humanoid robot. Now, if that sounds ambitious, just think about the potential market. We're talking about replacing physical labor, a market worth tens and tens of trillions of dollars globally. He's even said this could be bigger than the entire car business. It's a massive swing for the fences. Path number 3 brings us back to their bread and butter, actually making cars. But we're talking about doing it on a scale that's never been seen before. The goal they've set is 20 million cars a year by 2030. You know who the biggest car maker in the world is right now? Toyota. They make about 10 million. So Tesla's plan is to double the biggest player in the game. That's going to take some serious manufacturing magic. And that brings us to path number 4, the one that people often forget about, Tesla Energy. Look, the mission here is huge, to become a kind of global distributed power company. As we all move towards things like solar and wind, you need giant batteries to store that power and keep the grid stable. That's where things like the Megapack come in. They're trying to grab a slice of the global energy market, which, by the way, is even bigger than the car market. Okay, so Tesla is the main climb up that $5 trillion mountain. But there's a powerful ally in this quest. A wild card, really. And that's SpaceX.
It's a totally separate company, but its own valuation is going through the roof. And that could add a huge chunk to his net worth all by itself. So what's driving SpaceX's value? It really comes down to two big things. First, you've got Starlink, that global satellite internet service. Think about the recurring revenue from millions of people paying for internet all over the world. And then you have Starship, the giant fully reusable rocket that could just slash the cost of getting anything and anyone to space. Heck, if Starlink goes public on its own, that alone could add hundreds of billions to his bottom line.
But look, this is not a sure thing, not by a long shot. The map to $5 trillion is kind of like one of those old fantasy maps, you know? It's got "Here be dragons" written all over it. There are some massive risks that could completely derail this whole thing, and we have to talk about them.
So what are these dragons? Well, for one, there's just execution risk. I mean, FSD and Optimus are total moonshots. They might not actually work in the real world for decades, maybe ever. Then there's the competition. It is fierce. You've got companies like BYD in China coming on strong. You also have regulators constantly looking into safety and how they do business. And finally, there's the Elon factor itself. Is his focus too divided? Does his controversial personality create risks for the company? These are all very real questions. So, we've climbed the mountain, we've looked at the dragons, we've done the math. Where does that leave us? What's the final verdict here? Is this whole $1 trillion thing for real? You know, it really boils down to this one central idea. For Elon Musk to become a trillionaire, Tesla can't just sell more cars. That's not the path. The path requires a complete transformation. They have to stop being just a car company and actually become the world's leading AI and robotics company. They have to deliver on that massive, futuristic promise. And so that leaves us with the big question. Is this whole idea of $1 trillion net worth just a wild dream, something fueled by hype? Or is it a kind of destiny, something that's practically inevitable in the AI-driven future we're heading towards? Right now, nobody knows for sure. It all comes down to whether they can actually pull it off.